Dosh co-founders Shane Marsh and James McEniery were neighbours working in Singapore, where they'd become used to paying using digital wallets. After they both returned to New Zealand during the pandemic, they decided to launch Dosh a year ago. Now, you've started this fintech from scratch. What did you draw on from your backgrounds to allow you to do this?
Well, my background was in banking, and I had a specialist focus around financial institutions, which included fintech. So I really got to understand how fintechs around the world were operating with a specific focus on payments, and that really got me intrigued into how this was operating around the world and how it was evolving, and then how potentially that compares to New Zealand.
Yeah, and my background was more sales and marketing up in Singapore, and I come to Dosh with a consumer lens or a customer lens, and I just loved the way the digital wallets up in Asia were easy to use, highly engaging, and offered me choice, and just a great way to pay and pay money, and also, I guess, pay for goods and services. So, yeah, I loved it from a consumer aspect.
Mm. And what led you both to Singapore in the first place? And then once you were there, how did you find its fintech space compared to New Zealand's?
Yeah, so for me, I was transferred up there with ANZ to take on a bigger role leading the financial institutions part of the business. And for me, the real interest in Singapore is it's really one of those really advanced financial centres in the world where there's a lot happening. It attracts a lot of activity, and specifically in the fintech space where they've got the biggest fintech festival, which is the Singapore Fintech Festival held every year. And there's just a lot of interest and activity happening in that space. So for me, it was about really kind of putting yourself in the centre of that to see what's happening around the world.
Yeah, and from my perspective, it was just a great opportunity to understand how fast moving it was. So from a consumer perspective, we never used debit or credit cards, so that was all digital. It was on your digital wallets, and for me that was a big step when I moved up there from New Zealand to use this technology, and it really sort of drove my engagement with it. I was really excited to use this technology, and when it was time to come home, I was speaking to Shane, and he said, "What are you going to miss?" And I said, "Well, I miss the food, the culture, the climate." But I'm looking forward to using this technology back in New Zealand. It's been 4 or 5 years. I'm looking forward to the progression in New Zealand. And that's when Shane said, cannot. And we sat down and had a conversation about it.
Mm.
Mm. Now, as co-founders heading this very small company, how do you split your roles?
Yeah, good question. So, being the non-banker in the business, Shane's very much leads the banking compliance and operations side of the business, and I wear the hat, apart from a co-founder, of sales, marketing, and strategic planning around consumer. So anything that touches consumer, comms, UX, the experience, our voice to the customer sits in my lap.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was really about that expertise that I'd picked up in the banking world and applying that into this space. James and I have got very different skill sets and different areas of focus, and we find that's been great from a co-founder relationship because we're bringing different things to the table. When we look at topics or issues or opportunities, we take quite often different views around that, and that's great because it gives more of a rounded nature in decision making.
Do you ever disagree on the direction of the business, and how do you resolve that?
Yeah, we do. We have robust conversations, and it's obviously led by, for example, our roadmap, what next products to release in the Dosh app, and I'll have a view of what potentially the customer is experiencing or the customer feedback that's been given to us around, where that should lead, and we have some great conversations about planning, and usually it comes down to a very clear matrix. We have a strategy on a page which has 4 or 5 key priorities for our business in a given year, and if it's outside of those 5 or 6 or 4 or 5 priorities, then we won't do it. But no, we tend to align on most decisions. But those great robust conversations around product, operations, consumer, we always land in a pretty cool space.
Yeah, and we have a team, and we have an advisory board, and we have a really tight group of trusted suppliers that for us is they're all part of our extended team, and so we often will go to others for input and guidance and thinking that helps shape our decision making as well, because for us often you can feel we're a bit too close to the business or too close to the topic, and some outside-in views are often really great in terms of shaping direction.
Yeah, so you've got quite a heavyweight advisory board of 3 people. How important was it to you to get that advice structure in there earlier?
Yeah, it was really important. We wanted to select individuals who brought a certain expertise and also were passionate about the business and about their kind of background and what they thought they could bring to it. Each person, in terms of our conversations, really wanted to be involved and they could see the potential, and that's great because that gives us that kind of extra energy and motivation and drive as well. So we see them as kind of part of that team and have really benefited, I think, from the advice and guidance that they've given us.
What's some of the best advice they've given you?
It's a good question. I mean, most recently, I guess it's sustainability and stability on our platform. So, for example, Nick brings deep experience in his background around cloud performance and architecture. So we've made some decisions to improve some of our services in that space. Stephen has helped us understand the consumer and the customer from a loyalty perspective and what our specific demographic of the sweet spot of our customer base may want in a digital wallet. And with the launch of our Dosh Visa card the last couple of weeks, that's really accelerated that thinking around loyalty, specifically from a customer perspective.
Fred's really helped out with that kind of banking strategy piece, and we've had a significant number of opportunities come our way, and actually deciding what we want to do, and then importantly what we're not going to do as well, what's on strategy, what's off strategy. He's been able to help us, guide us around that. So as James has mentioned, each person's brought their own kind of area of expertise.
And I also think, just in closing on that question, is our advisory board are well connected. And probably one of the biggest learnings of experience coming back and leaving the large corporate role is your network and connections. And those our advisory board very luckily have helped us connect into businesses that maybe we wouldn't have connected into if we were just knocking on the door. We can get up into the exec and meet with decision makers around opportunity.
Mm-hmm. You raised $5 million in March this year. How hard did you find that capital raising process?
Yeah, well, personally, trying to raise money over Christmas period for me was a big learning curve. Not much happens between Christmas and the New Year's. So, for me, that was the biggest learning was timing. Let's not do it over a Christmas period when everyone's on holiday. But in terms of speed and how hard it was,
yeah, well, we had done a pre-seed round in the previous May, and we'd brought on a group of investors that were really passionate about what we were doing and the opportunity. And the seed round actually almost completely came from those existing investors, so we didn't actually have to go outside of the existing investor group to raise that. And so that was great because it gave us a sense that we were on track and that there was greater support there. We'll be looking to raise again kind of mid next year, and we'll probably look to expand that investor base slightly. So it'd be good to start to talk about to other investors at some stage next year about that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And about how much do you think you'll want to raise next year?
That's a great question, and I'll be honest with you, we haven't got to that answer yet. We anticipate it'll be a larger raise because Dosh is growing strongly, and we want to make sure there's enough firepower to really kind of take that to a highly scaled business. And so, but we haven't actually done the work to lock down a raise number yet.
Mm-hmm. And where would you want to see the business in 5 years' time?
Yeah, great question. We have a bit of a view. We've got a 7-year roadmap based on the product and the consumer opportunity. And I think personally for me, we started this because we believe that New Zealand lacked a little bit of innovation in the space. And so we brought innovation to the marketplace and it wasn't easy. It was a big year during that pandemic to stand the product up, and some pretty big learnings out of that. But I would like to see Dosh continue to grow and really give Kiwis and go deep in New Zealand the opportunity to help people with their finances. So that's everything from speed, financial capability. There's an opportunity here to get money to people in need instantly, which you can't do today. So there's a Dosh for Good opportunity that I'd like to, or would like to unpack and discover further. So that's working with community organisations, enabling younger people the opportunity to manage their own money in a safe, controlled environment, not put them into debt. And also, I'm very excited about the range of products that we will bring to the market that will enhance that experience with Dosh. So that's probably my starter.
Yeah, there's an opportunity, we believe, for Dosh to become the leading provider of digital financial services in the market. Financial services that are easy to consume and are good for people and will help them manage their money for good. And so for us, it's about looking at that trajectory of, well, what are those services that our customer base want and that we think we can do a better job of and others in the market, and really broadening out that services offering, all with a digital focus, easy to use, and providing good outcomes for Kiwis.
Mm. What about yourselves as co-founders? Do you expect to stay in the business during this period, over the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, very much so. It was a big leap of faith leaving a corporate after 15 years, and especially, we're not young founders, all startup entrepreneurs. So with that came risk, and the support of our families have been great to get us to where we are. But no, Dosh is very personal and passionate for me, and while I've brought a lot of the skill set from the corporate days into Dosh, setting up the company, the way we do business, and our planning and execution, I've enjoyed the last year. While it's been hard, Shane and I leading the decisions, we move extremely quick, so we can decide on strategy, get inputs, invest money where it's needed, and for me that's exciting. Innovation needs to move quickly to keep up with demands and certain market conditions. So for me, I wouldn't leave it at this point, because it's just been such a big learning curve for me, but also I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, we've got a 7-year roadmap, and to be honest, with the amount of items on that roadmap, things that we need to deliver, we'll need to move really fast to deliver within that period. So it's always going to be, for us, fast moving and exciting. And we would love to see Dosh go from the kitchen where we created the company and got things going to New Zealand's leading digital financial services provider, and that's something we're pushing really hard to achieve.
Mm-hmm. It's been a fairly short time, since you came up with the concept and launched the company. What would be the biggest challenges you've faced over that time?
From my perspective, and maybe Shane can talk about the setting up of the product and implementing in New Zealand from a banking perspective. From my perspective, it's really, Kiwis in New Zealanders are habitual in terms of their behaviour, right? So to bring while the technology is not new, it's 14 years old, we've just picked up and brought it to New Zealand for the first time, changing behaviours and changing the way people think about payments and digital wallets, and there's a lot of news and negative news around scamming and crypto and all that sort of space, whereas we're trying to coach and teach people that there is another way. The rest of the world are doing things differently. So for me, it's how we communicate that at the pace we're moving. So giving people a chance to experience the product, learn it's different, so that with difference and change comes sometimes barriers. But we're up for it. So yeah, that would be my biggest learning, is we have to be a little bit patient to get people on the journey and get them experience the technology. But once they're in and they see how easy it to use, it's been great to see people adopt it.
Yeah, and I think for me the biggest challenge was probably getting to the launch. Multiple parties, from large institutions to smaller providers, had attempted to set up the product that we launched and didn't manage to actually get to launching it. And there's a number of really good reasons why that can be the case, from not being able to get the right setup to getting ultimately a banking partner to provide to support you and hold the monies and do the transactions in the background, and so actually going through those components, setting up the compliance and getting to a space where you actually get to launch the product was extremely difficult. And so I often say that our greatest success to date is actually starting, because so many others have tried and never got there. And now that we're up and running, it really feels like it's just about kind of building on what we've done to date. But the first kind of year or so for us getting to that launch state was a real challenge.
James and Shane, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Having us.